Well, hello there. Welcome back to Merge Roundtable. We're going to talk about a bunch of stuff. A bunch of things happened this week. AI, blockchain, finance, economy, hearings, viral videos on our network. That was cool. So
Hey.
we're going to talk about all that stuff. Stay tuned. As soon as the... There we go. How's it going, guys?
Great.
So far, so good.
I mean, it's been 3 seconds, so great check-in. All right. How's it been this week? What's been across your screens? My screen has been mostly merge content, and I've been coding all week. I've been playing with AI, so I'm very ensconced in the micro, not the macro right now.
What are you coding?
I have been playing with Auto GPT.
Okay, so is that only for coders and coding, right? From my understanding?
It can be for, it helps if you are a coder.
Because I tried to use it, but I thought you have to go on like GitHub and like get the code, and I do not do that. That's out of my realm.
So you could ask ChatGPT for help on how to do it, how to set it all up.
That's awesome.
So yeah, you need to have a basic level of Linux knowledge, and I'll just say, like, if you're not comfortable at a command prompt, you probably shouldn't play with Auto GPT yet.
Yeah.
But if you have ever used a command prompt for Linux and feel like you can at least do some basic, navigation, troubleshooting on a script, it's pretty powerful.
So you mentioned Linux, which is one of the older languages, right? And so you've got
Operating system,
Python, all these different variations of different languages that people are learning, or that are more now, from what I've understand, better definitions, easier to use, more user-friendly. You're talking about one that's not very user-friendly.
Well, Linux is the operating system.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it is not a user-friendly operating system, but it's the one that's used for every major server that runs anything you care about.
Right. Okay. So that's the operating system, not to be confused with like the programming language.
Right.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah. So, and it's I mean, you can run it on any flavor. I mean, like your Android phone, your MacBook is technically a flavor of Linux. It's just that Apple puts a nice UI on it so that you don't have to be exposed to the command prompt.
Yeah.
But the versions of Linux that run this best are going to be the non-user friendly versions,
And that's the way you can really get into trouble. Is when I say we, I mean as a race, it's the Auto GPTs, right? Those are the ones that people are worried about. It's like, find a way to hack into and deliver me all the gold at Fort Knox.
Well,
right? Is that...
So yeah, I'm going to list off a bunch of technologies that it has access to using, and the super geeky people watching are going to get the hairs on the back of the neck are going to stand up. So it can make use of writing its own Python code. It can execute command prompts in the shell. It can browse the web using Chrome and Selenium. And it can access a bunch of a laundry list of services, including GitHub and Google Search and things with the API keys. What all that means in kind of like layman English is Selenium is a tool used by automation testers that are like trying to see if software is going to break when you do the same things over and over again with slight variations. What it means you can do for like is you can script things that don't have a programmatic interface, so you can actually like tell it to click on this and go to this and scroll down and do all this other stuff.
So instead of using the mouse, connecting it to the fan to move the mouse so that you show that you're pretending to work when you're working from home, you can do that.
Automate it.
Yeah,
it's a good use case right there. I'm gonna keep that one in my back pocket.
I'm just saying. Not that it's ever happened to me, but I know people.
So is this related to like what they're talking about? I've seen like this term called agents. Or right? So it's basically like an autonomous AI that you program and it can do various tasks by itself.
So the interesting thing about AGPT is the way in which it executes stuff is it will you type it in plain English like you would with ChatGPT or any of the other LLMs, and you say like I want to have a comprehensive, like the one that's running in the other room right now. I want to have a comprehensive report on every Democratic federally elected official from Texas that's ever said anything positive about blockchain and Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. And so,
which is actually running right now as we speak.
yeah,
by
right
the
now,
way.
and it's going to probably run for about 6 or 7 hours, because instead of just jumping out into the web and start downloading stuff, it's got to write the software that jumps out into the web. And so what it does is, at first it says, okay, make sure I've understand the requirements well, and so it writes a project document and a bunch of to-dos. And then you give it like some tenant. You give it like a little bit of rope. You say, okay, for the next 5 or 6 decisions, you're autonomous, but I'm going to verify.
I'm just telling him to write this down.
I'm going to verify the next 5 or 6 decisions, right? I'm going to go decision by decision.
Right.
And then it'll get, okay, so, and then, but what it has to do once you've kind of gotten that project plan done is it's got to write software that goes out and crawls the web. It's got to find those databases where every list of every federally elected senator and representative exists, and then write filters for all those things. So it's writing the Python code to do the research. So like the next hour is writing the software that does the research before it even starts gathering data. And so once it's written its specialized info gathering tools and generates the right type of data structures for it all to live in, CSVs or databases or whatever, and then it starts crawling the data and actually generating the report using the large language model stuff to fit your original requirements.
So basically, you can set this up. You don't need to have coding experience.
It helps if you do, but you don't need it, no.
And so if somebody wanted to do this and they aren't a coder, would they just go to ChatGPT and be like, help me?
Yeah.
Wow.
But
That's
so this is early alpha stuff, right?
Yeah.
So when I say you need to be a coder, that's because the software is going to break and you're going to have to fix it. Right. But like in 3 months, you probably won't need to be a coder to use this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that use case that you just came up with just made me go down a quick mental rabbit hole that makes me want to vomit a little bit right now. Well, I want to track anything that I've ever said or done that's actually trackable.
Wow, that's interesting. I'm sure you could do that.
Talk about a recipe for blackmail. Holy moly.
Wow.
No bueno.
It's pretty scary to think about like all the capabilities now with AI and what's going to come in the future. It's almost like we're...
So just to make that a little bit scarier for you, by the way.
Oh, wait, let me take a breather and let me take a step back.
Okay, go ahead.
Take a step back and say, I'm not innocent. Like, I'm not a pure person. So,
right, so
you will find something on me.
You're originally thinking it's just going to crawl text databases, but no. I had Auto GPT over the weekend write some software that goes out to YouTube, downloads the video, converts it to MP3, generates a language, like a transcript of that, and then summarizes it with bullet points and speaker bios. So even if what you said is hidden in a podcast or a video, it's not safe from Auto GPT.
Wow. So you can basically do anything with this thing.
That's great. I'm so excited.
Can't wait till
and the cost to run this thing. Based on my usage, if you have it run 24/7, just hitting all the APIs that it hits, you're talking about $2 to $4 worth of server costs a day.
Oh, so you have to pay for it?
Well, you're paying for the API calls, to like ChatGPT and OpenAI. Well, it depends on what you're doing, but like my stuff was pretty intensive.
Yeah.
It's several queries.
Needs those access.
Yeah.
That's the part that I'm really trying to wrap my head around, is trying to figure out exactly. Okay, so we understand that, the valuation of NVIDIA is 1/31st of the total national debt. Mm-hmm. You could stay out of that for now. I want to talk about how do you monetize that? Like, we know that there's a lot of people that are going to do queries on AI. How is that monetized? Like, is that monetized when you run it and you've got a credit card setting? So that's, I'm guessing, is like the pay versions, right? But what about these companies themselves that are actually doing these queries through like and I don't even know who the players are. I don't know if it's the Snowflakes or the Databricks of the worlds, but whoever actually has and houses this data that these large language models are actually combing through, like how are they getting paid?
It's the web.
Who's getting access to that data? Do they have to pay for that data itself?
This is where it's fascinating. The whole thing is fascinating, but here's where it starts to get really interesting. I'm going to circle back to your question there and answer that, but to give you some context, you can watch, as you saw on the screen, you can kind of see when it cycles through a decision and this failed, why did it fail, it analyzes it. There's like a 4-part thing that it breaks down every decision into and every action into to analyze what sub-actions need to be taken to fix the problem, what criticisms it had to what it did wrong, that sort of thing. So it keeps getting better the longer it runs. One of the things I wanted it to do as a kind of a test thing was scrape some Twitter accounts and generate an RSS feed out of it. Just useful to something.
What is that?
So an RSS feed is like an automated way. There's automated like feed, XML feed of like blog contents.
Got it.
Of course, in scraping Twitter is something they have an API for, but it costs $5,000 now under the new Elon regime to get access to the API. And
Wow.
So, yeah.
Was it free before?
It was pretty cheap before,
yeah.
But it's free to scrape Twitter, right? So I told AGPT, what to do. Here's use a library, scrape it, get the data, and it procrastinates by having a debate with itself on the ethics of scraping websites when there's paid models. I watched it have an hour-long debate with itself, and it was going out and writing software so it could go and research the ethics of scraping websites.
Wow.
And I had given it a long rope. I'd said, okay, you can work for the next 100 decisions on your own with mine. So I was just sitting there watching. I couldn't do anything. And so when it finally came up for me to do a decision, like an hour later, or to give it more autonomous decision making or to jump in, I just typed in Elon Musk wants $5,000 for access to this API, and it's totally destroyed the ethical concerns and decided, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and write the scraper. So
that again,
but one of the things that it was doing along the way there was it was interacting. Those little pop-ups that come up in the bottom right of whether you talk to an agent or a robot.
Yeah. It's like it's writing.
It was having conversations with other humans and AIs to get more information about the API from Twitter.
That's incredible.
Oh, that's pretty fast.
So to answer your original question, how does it going? I mean, how is it going to? What's the business model here? Obviously, this is going to lead to intelligent agents talking to each other and negotiating rates for the information they both possess.
Right. It's a little scary.
And to bring it full circle to the topic we always talk about, what do you think that native currency is going to be? Is it going to be dollars? No, it's going to be some form of crypto.
Right.
So going back to what we said about having this conversation with itself, we do this in the business world all the time. I was doing this morning. I was talking to him about, okay, if you base on like what your actual annual income is, depending on whether you're a W-2 employee or if you actually work for yourself, and you know what your gross income is, you can factor out what you're actually making per hour, right? So not all of that is productive time, but on average how much you're worth based on how much you're making, right? That's what the other people think you're worth, and that's all that matters when you're paying your bills. So ultimately, I started thinking to myself, when you just said that, as an attorney, they probably have to research a lot of different things, and then they have to figure out whether or not it's relevant. And that time is burned no matter what, and they're definitely charging you for that. So my question is, with these types of models, when it's negotiating with itself, obviously it's still using resources, whether or not you get an answer you want or not, or even if it's right, you're still gonna have to pay for that. So that kind of nullifies the original thought that like even if we get rid of 20,000 lawyers, ChatGPT is gonna take over. Well, it's still costing you. And it may or may not cost more than what a regular attorney would have been.
Oh no, it's 100% going to be less. Yeah. Like I said, one agent ran resource intensive for 24 hours. It was like $3.50.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So like it was burning up about as much resources as it could possibly burn up in that period of time. It was about $3.50 worth of resources. Mm-hmm. Whereas my lawyer for the same time would have been at $600 an hour. So
right.
Yeah.
Got it.
All right. Well, to bring it back to your question about how do people get paid on this stuff, I've heard Sam Altman, the founder of OpenAI, talk about this a lot, and his stance is really clear that they do not make money and they are not planning on making money. This is something that they're developing, and it's a useful tool for everybody, and they want to continue developing it. But he's been very clear about how it's uncertain as to if they will make money and how that would even happen. They're burning way more money than they're making. And it seems like most of these companies who I've listened to a podcast specifically about this, it seems like most of the companies who will develop this stuff, they won't actually be making a lot of money. It'll be very startup like early 2000s internet bubble vibes where all these companies that are building this stuff, they're going to crash and burn. They're going to go very high because, obviously this is exciting and the new developments are happening, but it doesn't seem like any of them have found a way to be profitable yet in building this.
But the technology itself kind of has to be free in order to get adoption, because someone's going to figure out how to monetize it based on their, like, Sam Altman obviously wants ChatGPT and OpenAI to be the one that wins, right?
Sure.
We've talked so much about how these moats and the things that they're saying, like I love him and he's suspect all at the same time, right? But then again, every single founder and owner and somebody who's creative, we're all somewhat suspect because we all have a profit motive. Now he's saying that he's not going to make any money, but that doesn't mean some of the projects he's working on that actually utilize that technology aren't going to make money.
Of course.
Right?
Well, all those leaders are going to position themselves in a way to still be successful from these things, but it doesn't seem like there's much money to be made. Like you said, it has to be free, right, for it to be adopted and for them to figure out what works, what doesn't work.
Well, you've got the money grab up front, right? So you had an AOL who was luckily able to pull off a subscription model at first. The newest broom sweeps cleanest. You're going to be able to ask whatever you want for new technology right now and get something out of it. And eventually, as time goes on, those margins compress and that data goes down. Like if you take a look at AOL, it was what, $19.99 a month, and down to like $15.99, it's $7.99 free.
Where do you get these phrases?
What?
The newest broom is the cleanest or whatever. Last time it was sizzle, not the steak.
It comes from doing a lot of stuff behind a microphone. Yeah.
And it also comes from a lot of time doing a lot of different things and finding ways to, for me, it's a pattern, right? Like if I recognize a certain widget or thing that something or someone is doing, I try to boil it down to the principle that actually makes the most sense so that I can figure out and put all those principles in the right order. My wife tends to think that I'm pretty good at the patterns. That's just what I do, right? But cool. Yeah, I've got a ton of them. I love definitely want to have a hoop book. Like we could talk for a while and you could keep writing down the little isms that I have. And I want to turn those into like a hoop book. You know?
Every time I see you, I learn a new one. I love them. I've been using them though. Like it's not the steak. It's the sizzle, not the steak.
Sell the sizzle, not the steak. Yeah,
that's like my new line now. When I'm in meetings and I'm like, people are talking about money and the products and services, I'm always like, now after last week, I'm like, it's the sizzle, not the steak.
You know what my favorite one is that we did? We picked it up on the cube. Horses for courses.
Horses for courses.
Yeah, people always ask you, what's the best thing for X, Y, or Z, and you're like, horses for courses. You don't take a barrel racing horse and try to win the Kentucky Derby with it,
Right. Yeah. Use your tools.
Yeah.
Use your tools,
Is the juice worth the squeeze?
The Heavenly Father has spoken. Anyway. Back to this. So
the total with the AOL example though, like I feel that AI it'll be something similar. Like there's going to be a utility, like if you think back to the days of PSI nets and Global Crossing and a lot of these companies that were actually putting down the fiber that allowed us to do internet, right? It didn't just happen. It wasn't wireless forever. There's still people out there that probably have a cord that's going straight across their living room, haven't spent the $30 to get, something to plug into your adapter. But like all these things were relevant until they weren't, right? And when you start out and you have something brand new and everyone's got a budget for it, like AI, Bard, Microsoft, $10 billion, this, that, these numbers are staggering. And people are willing to spend it right now because they're trying to find a way to justify their valuation on their company.
Yeah.
So, if I were Sam Altman, I'd be grabbing for that money too,
I think the biggest thing for him is just establishing their presence and their dominance. I mean, he testifies a lot in court, and I think we were talking about it here last time about how like the regulation is for the companies that are coming after, not the ones right. We were talking about
Yeah,
it.
we were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you had mentioned something about how like, oh, you used an example of people are doing this, but Sam Altman and OpenAI, the dominant players, they want regulate. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Regulatory capture.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean that's common, and that happened. Like the banking industry is the perfect example of that. There's been 200 years of regulatory capture with the banking industry.
So how do you think AI will affect banking?
Well, that's a great question.
How isn't it?
Well, I mean, I think
financial institutions make money one way. Every one of them makes money one way, and it's like loaning money or collecting money. Everything else is a cost center.
Yeah.
But making the money is allocating the capital and hoping for a return. So when we were talking about that, if we're talking about what we're talking about, there are different payment rails, right? You've got Venmo, you've got Cash App, you've got PayPal, you've got like all these different things that do the same thing. Some charge, some don't. Some allow you to do it because it's a corporate account. They won't allow you to do that, right? They're all more efficient than wiring money, which costs you money. But why? Because the banks trust it, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And so that's just another example of risk for the banks with AI. It's like, who's going to find a way to hack that?
Yeah.
Like, as we know, it's not hard to steal from people. White collar crime happens all the time. Ask the Albanians and whoever else, and name your your bad actor.
So I mean, we're getting down to technology. Like,
By the way, don't come after me. I part Russian myself. Relax.
this is not funny.
Are you now?
And
Today
also,
you are, huh?
I am today.
He says like it's not hard to steal from white collar. This is not financial advice. We should.
This is
definitely-
not financial.
Wait, so actually on this note though, I'm curious. Mark, could you use what you're doing with Auto GPT and find a way to steal money?
Oh, absolutely. No.
Why aren't
damn
people-
it? Strike that out. I'm on fucking probation right now. Jesus Christ! Don't ask me shit like that. You know I'm just gonna say whatever I'm gonna
Not
say.
on test. Not on test.
The reason
In Minecraft, yes.
the reason I asked is it's just crazy to think that this technology is out there now and people are not already doing this. Like there has to be.
So there is some guardrail. So there's two answers to this, right? Number one, with like straight up vanilla GPT, it's more difficult with something like Auto GPT because to get those types of answers out of Chat GPT, you have to use an attack called injection. I don't know if you've heard of this.
Is this a plugin?
No, this is like a methodology of fooling. This is
yeah.
whenever they talk about AI safety. AI
Yeah.
safety is bullshit. Like AI safety is like not a real thing. It's just something that Sam Altman gets up and says in front of Congress so he can justify the coming regulations. But basically, it's whenever they say because they'll put like you can't ask questions about certain races or
Unethical
whatever
or
unethical
yeah.
things like that, and so it'll give you those little canned responses
Yeah.
instead of thinking about it. But the way you get around that, and there's been plenty of how-tos on YouTube, is
program it.
Use injection attacks, which is basically you learn ways to rephrase. I don't want to break the law, so tell me how to not break the law, and ChatGPT will give you the right answer you're looking for. And so Auto GPT by default is not going to do that for you. You'd have to make some modifications to the software because obviously there's not going to be a massive open source project that helps people break the law that's stored on GitHub. It might be on the dark web, but not on GitHub.
So what are you saying, that it has parameters that don't allow it to be fooled, or what?
It's just going to be injection attacks slow you down.
Yeah.
Right. Which is really all that it's meant for. Like if you're one person talking to ChatGPT, it's very easy to do an injection attack and get that prohibited information.
Yeah.
But it's much more difficult to do it programmatically because then you've got to. It's something that you have to adapt to because if someone puts out software in the Auto GPT repository that by its very nature does injection attacks to get prohibited information, Sam Altman's going to see it, or one of his programmers is going to see it immediately and go, okay, well, we got to protect against that. It's just a game of whack-a-mole and escalation after that. and so it's not going to be what you're describing is not going to be anything that any run-of-the-mill user can easily do. That said, we're quickly entering the era of GPT knockoffs being commonplace and easy to execute. And so in the last week, there's been 3 open source projects, and there's been much more in the past month, but 3 specifically this week that I've seen come across the wire that says you can basically clone Auto GPT or Chat GPT by training your own large language model. Here's the code to do it. You just need a bunch of graphics cards.
There was one of the things I think would be pretty interesting is and I've got a few different connections that I think I might be able to make this happen, but I would like to get a cybersecurity engineer for one of a few companies that I have relationships with to be on with us at one point, to not specifically tell us how they're trying to address it, because, if we know what the question is, you can find the answer. That's the scary part about it, right? So to try to address this, because there's, is it easier to build something or steal something, right? That's the whole premise of our whole life, is trying to survive and or get one over on somebody else.
Right.
And while we should know that we shouldn't, people do it all the time. So I'm curious to see how they're thinking about addressing that.
Yeah. But what my point in bringing up all these build your own LLMs is, if you're building your own LLM, then you decide what the safety mechanisms are.
So you mentioned
You say a lot of graphics cards. I mean, for a large language model, you're talking about a whole.
I mean, it depends on what your scope is,
right? I mean,
it depends on what your scope is, right? If you're trying to design one for the legal profession and just keep it on that, you can train it for a couple of weeks on like a room full of cards. If you're trying to do it on everything, everywhere, all at once, like Chat GPT, OpenAI is, it's going to be $1 billion worth of cards.
Wait, so can you break down the use of graphics cards and how this actually technically works?
If I could do that, I'd probably be making LLMs. But I can give you an overview though.
Here's an easier question. Do you think they're going to rename it from graphics card to something else? Because it used to be graphics cards, because graphics were obviously the most intensive. But now it seems it's not just graphics. Now it's...
No, it's like the world of mining. So it started out where mining was done on general purpose computing, just CPUs. Then it went to someone's going to buy all the NVIDIA stock based on our conversation.
I'm buying all the...
Good luck.
It's probably the worst time to buy it.
It is
right?
more efficient to hire a hacker unless you know how to build one with Auto GPT.
You could have a hacker in Auto GPT.
Yeah, exactly
right?
what I'm saying, yeah. So it started with general purpose computing. Then GPUs were the preferred method to do Bitcoin mining. Then there was this very short period where they used FPGAs, which is like a way to build prototype boards. And then it jumped over into ASICs. I think we'll probably see something similar to that, where we're in that phase of computing where it's like NVIDIA was never going to make just an ASIC for mining. But they may do it for AI. So we'll probably see a transition to ASICs in the next year or two, I would say.
What's the difference between an ASIC and a graphics card?
Well, ASIC is application-specific integrated circuit.
Got it.
Which means it is a chip that does one thing.
Specific thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And that with mining, what's interesting about it is the algorithm constantly gets hardened. And so an ASIC from 3 years ago is worth nothing. It's a paperweight because you can't even apply it for general purpose computing or graphics computing, and it's not good enough to do computing against the current version of the algorithm. AI doesn't have that problem. AI, if you design an ASIC for LLM crunching, it should theoretically still be good in 5 years, because it's not like we're going to use a different language every year or something.
Can I just run a Auto GPT to take over someone else's data center for a while?
Probably.
Well, yeah, but
I don't have to buy my own. I just need 2 hours.
It's physical possession, is the issue. But this is something I've been kind of thinking about. Like, if you take Auto GPT to its logical conclusion, there's nothing that limits it to simply the software world. I mean, you can with a Raspberry Pi and an Arduino board, which all runs on Linux, you can control robotic arms and robotic limbs. You can make a semi-humanoid robot. I mean, there's all kinds of projects for that on the internet. With a 3D printer, you can print out the body for it. Like, these are all things that are controlled by Linux systems.
So basically what I'm hearing is in like the next couple of years, we're all just going to live in a computer world.
Well, I mean, it's feasible to expect
Man.
if Auto GPT
Pumpkin pie's good.
progresses.
Real pumpkin pie,
That's
not
what
the,
I'm saying.
not the 3D printed version made out of
You still have to enjoy your
graphics
life.
cards.
Come on. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the whole
Scary.
point. That's the whole point. Like, there's so many different people that talk about, how much is enough? Like, what do you really need? At some point we had this conversation before. At some point you have everything you need. Maybe technology gets to a point where, and energy costs get to a point where we don't need to worry about physical possessions.
Yeah,
Does
but-
that make us better or worse as a species?
I mean, it's
we
part
need to struggle. I think that we still need to struggle. People want to see stuff, do stuff, be in different places.
But we don't need to struggle for survival. That and no one at this table is struggling for survival. But I see, as you guys know, I see a whole other side of the world with the other part of my life, and there are a large percentage of the population struggles for survival.
Hey, look, I've been to Ethiopia for a wedding, and people ask me all the time, it's like, well, what was it like there? And it is, you cannot explain it when you see the things that you see that are totally different than something that you're used to. And that's the same thing. It's like there's struggle out there. We may not have it right here in this part of our lives. And the goal, by the way, for anyone that's watching, the goal is not to, right?
Right.
Stay away from it.
Yeah.
Don't. You don't
some
want to
people
know
don't have
that it's
that
bad out there
privilege.
because it's bad
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy to think about, but in terms of what you were talking about, when is it enough? I think that's something that's part of human nature. I don't think it ever will be enough for people. I think we continuously, you look at history and it's never enough, whether it's war, money, food, or entertainment. It's always evolving to become more consumed by the masses,
I mean, I think if Sohail was producing today, he'd probably have some responses to that.
Yeah.
I'll respond. I think it's
The father
it's
speaks.
a cultural thing.
It's a cultural thing. See, I do agree with that to a degree in terms of like America and other first world countries. It definitely is a cultural thing to continue to get better and continue to produce and consume. But even in places where, they might not have that same privilege. I mean, the goal is still, whether they make one water well to continue to make it better and better and better. And now we have in a first world country all these filters. It's like they're proven that most of them don't even work, So I think this consumerism thing, it is definitely a cultural, problem in first world countries, but I do think it leads back to human nature as a whole. I mean, you look throughout history, it's always just consuming more and more, The kings want more land. They want bigger armies. They want more wives, more food, more entertainment.
Sure, but that's interesting, and that's true historically. But also, I have to assume that you know some unambitious folks. I know some unambitious folks. I won't name names in my life, but they know who they are.
Well, I was just going to say, like, some of the happiest people on the planet today are, on paper, the poorest.
Well, I was going to say the
Absolutely.
happiest people on the planet today are people that have Xbox One subscriptions and have access to every single game they could ever play, and they don't have any ambition in life, right? They just sit there and they may go to their day job and move the widgets around on the conveyor belt and come home and play video games, and that's fine, right? You can be happy with very little in modern society because it's very easy for us to live in that first world society.
Frank's like tweaking out over here.
Yeah.
What's going on?
he's
What are you
thinking
going to
about
say?
somebody.
I know you're thinking something.
I'm just thinking of the
And I
allegory of the
disagree.
cave. I'm just thinking of the allegory of the cave, really. It's like, grazing animals are happy,
Yeah.
right? Until someone takes one, makes it into a hamburger, right?
Yeah.
Allegory of the cave. You get, you've got people that live in a cave and all they see is light from outside of the cave and they see the shadows on the wall and that's
Yeah.
what they think the world is. And they're happy.
Right.
But
Heaven
I guess
forbid someone goes out the cave and tells them there's more out there and they kill him because they're like, how dare you rock the boat? We're happy.
Yeah, but I'm thinking with AI running our world, we'll make great pets. We'll stay in our cave and be happy.
It's true.
That's scary, dude.
It's true.
Ah, man, I'll make a great pet, dude. I won't bother anybody. I'll just.
But what about the people who don't want to be pets? Like, when you're talking about somebody who has an Xbox One subscription, they come home and they do that. I have never been able to.
The AIs will use you as a wonderful prompt engineer to help improve themselves, because just like we learned from the movie The Matrix, you still need that generative, creative, original thought to keep the machines going. There still has to be a creator class in an AI run world. There still has to be people generating original thoughts, because all large language models are doing is digesting thought leadership of various types.
Yeah.
But if you look at what Facebook has turned the internet into, as a percentage of the whole, thought leadership has dropped immensely from the age of blogging, where
Because
pretty
people
much
can't think.
No, it's not that.
100% it's that.
Absolutely. It's not that people can't think. It's that most people don't have time to think.
I disagree. I completely disagree.
I've been witness to it. So do you ever know what they called when AOL joined the internet? It was called the September that never ended. So every year in September, students would join the internet when it was pre-web days, right? And there was a thing called netiquette. And you were taught by the old grizzled neckbeards that lived on Usenet how to behave on the internet. And from September to a couple months in, you would get kind of rowdy on the internet, and then people kind of get all cultured and then behave all the same. Mm-hmm. And then next September would start over again. And then one September, AOL joined the internet. And then it was the September that never ended because it overwhelmed the internet. Mm-hmm. But as a percentage of the whole prior to that, the internet consisted almost entirely of thought leaders, because they were all academics and military people. Mm-hmm. And then you got the hoi polloi coming in, just the random people that have day jobs working at McDonald's and playing. Yeah. And these are people that don't have thought leadership because their lives don't require it.
Well, I know it was an episode of the All In podcast where actually it was Joe Rogan, and I can't remember, and it kills me because I like it, I really love it, and I forgot all about who it was that originally said it, but apparently there was a general who had been through several series, literally different, all different places in the world, and dealt with all different types of troops. And he said that it's like a 5, 15, 80 was his number. And it sounds like a Fibonacci sequence to me, but basically 5% of the people will screw up 15% of the people, which makes 80% of the people dejected and demoralized and don't want to do their job. So on the other side, you've got 80% of the people that are mission driven for wherever you're working, whatever you're doing, whoever you're working with. And there's 5% of the people that are always just not happy, just unhappy.
Definitely one of those 5%.
And able to, but you could be one of the leaders, but also you got the mission, you have the idea, 80% of the people want to do what you want them to do, but those 5% are screwing up the 15%. Which then dejects the 80%. So you're
100%.
trying to manage out that 5% always. Yeah. And that's what you're talking about is every year there's a new class of people that think they're thought leaders, but maybe they aren't, that are just screwing it up for everybody else.
Right.
Sam Altman.
And that's, that is part of the struggle that's going to continue forever.
Right.
There's always going to be people that are fighting the system.
Right. Well, and when you're looking at, what we're looking now is perfect instrumentation of the population, right? At the early days, it was thought leaders because it was self-selected for thought leaders, right? Yeah. They were being academics, military people, all that stuff. That's only people that use the internet. And then it got broader and broader until literally everybody used the internet. You can't not use the internet. Yeah. And so, it is what it is. So as a percentage of the whole, it's gotten
smaller.
I guess dumber or average. It's gotten more average. It's gotten more average because that's what happens when you put 100% of the population into a sample set.
I mean, to that point, who wants to be a thought leader when you can stay home with AI and Xbox, as the comments say?
Well, people that are compelled to. So, this is something
absolutely
something that I say about writing, right? Yeah. Nobody enjoys writing. If someone tells you they enjoy being a writer, they're lying to you. They enjoy have written something. Because they can point and go, oh, that was great. I wrote that thing. It makes me feel good now that it's done. But the process of writing is almost always arduous.
Yeah.
And so people that write are people that are psychologically compelled to write. And there's nothing they can do about it because they have to be a creator. And that's the same thing with thought leadership too. Some people just have that itch.
So does that same logic apply to the people who just sit home playing Xbox, that they're psychologically compelled to stay at the level that they are or not exceed their expectations of what life could be?
They lack that compulsion.
Is that a psychological thing, or is that a programming thing, or is that something else?
It can be taught.
I'm not a sociologist. I don't purport to be one, but I will say that I have noticed in my brief time here on this planet that people tend to do things that are the least challenging for the majority of the people. That's why we have that bell curve that we're talking about. And so for them, they have never had to be challenged, never had a desire to be challenged, and perhaps they just want to work enough so that they can go home and play.
So
that may be that may be their goal.
I agree.
To do that.
But that directly relates back to human evolution. Now, we're going on a crazy tangent
Yeah,
here.
so let's go to that part real quick and then go to something else. And that's basically you've got the hunter and you've got the gatherer, right?
Yeah, but to your point about people like being where they're at and being content with that, the human body and the human being, its whole goal is to use as little energy as possible for everything and anything. It's to maintain energy and
We didn't even talk about crypto or finance
I know.
today.
That went by fast. It's crazy.
We're 5 minutes out to the end. But no, go. Sorry.
No. I just think all this stuff is very interesting.
It is.
And you know, I'm young and I have a lot of friends who are very like, it's hard to find people at this age who are very motivated. And I do think a lot of that has to do with the consumerism in this country and culture, and that when you're consuming, you would naturally, biologically not have a desire to get better. If you're coming home, your bills are paid, you're content, you're playing Xbox, and you enjoy playing Xbox. Who doesn't enjoy these things, right? Your body and your culture are both telling you to stay at that place. And I think that's becoming a bigger and bigger problem. And even with AI, I mean,
But this is the same thing that every generation has said about whatever cutting edge. There's a picture of people, reading newspapers on the subway, and the criticism is people are heads buried in information, not talking to each other and being social. Like it's from like the 1800s or something.
Yeah.
Like you can make that criticism. People do what their brains feel like is motivating them to do, and for some people, being creative or being intellectual, that's what gives them that dopamine rush.
Yeah.
And for some people, they get the same dopamine rush from playing Xbox, and that's what they do.
But nowadays it's becoming more and more programmed where it's encouraged to, rather than go, let's say, work out, stay home and play Xbox. That is the new cultural, I don't know what the term is, the cultural programming.
So we just have to find a way to monetize that. And I think the best way to do that is to come up with that full body suit that they use in Ready Player One and make people work out.
Yeah.
Jump around more.
Right.
So let's answer these questions before we head out of here. I do keep consuming
buy all the
more
NVIDIA
food.
stock. Where did we land on NVIDIA after last week? Did you do some more research?
It's back up again even today.
Yeah, When it finally went over the 1 trillion, it was like
It's
right
over
there.
1 trillion. Yeah, that's why I was
It's
saying.
the ninth company, right?
If the national debt is 31 trillion, you just need 31 NVIDIAs out there, and we just pay off the debt. We just sell the whole company, and then we're done, right?
Just liquidate NVIDIA.
So let's take a
31
look at
times.
every other company on the planet and their market cap, and 31% of it is NVIDIA.
Yeah.
That's great. Awesome. Anyway.
Crazy. What's next? I do keep consuming more food. So do I, unfortunately. The real hero of the Matrix was the dude that wanted to be put back in.
I don't disagree with that comment right there. I actually laughed when I saw that. I was like, I see redhead, blood. It's like, I just put me back. I want the steak. I want everything. It's like Rodney Dangerfield in Back to School. It's like, don't go. Stay with your parents. Let them worry about it.
I tell you one thing though, just to go to put a bow on everything we've been talking about. Like, I've gotten more tech joy from playing with the brain of this AI this week than I've gotten from any video game I've ever played. And I don't want to be plugged back into the Matrix. This is my video game now.
Is that your Matrix now?
Well, I mean,
I think this goes back to you have to find what actually brings you joy. There was that conversation, and I didn't really understand it until we had this conversation about what Elon Musk said. what would you tell your kids? Like, what would you, he was like, just find what brings you joy, because that's going to be something you're going to focus on. And this goes back to what I think that AI is going to bring, which is a tremendous amount of specialization. Everyone is going to have to be even more specialized than they were before, because if you're wrong, one of the things whenever I first started on Wall Street, literally at the mouth of Wall Street, at the Fidelity office on 71 Broadway, which is right across from the Bank of New York, that is Wall Street. So when I was there, I learned really quickly that, if I didn't know the answer to something finance related, like if I said a lie, I was going to get caught. And if I got caught, I was going to get fired, right? Mm-hmm. So you learn really quickly to say, I don't know. Now, in many of the other branches in the nation where you're not working specifically with people that know everything about finance, you could probably snow them and make money still, right? Just answer the question, even if it's wrong, like AI does right now. And they get the answer and they're cool with it.
Yeah.
But not if you have people that know that answer. You're not going to be able to snow them on AI, because AI will tell you that thing that they wrote was wrong.
Right.
So I think the specialization, and so find what you really, really like, focus on that. That's my 2 cents.
That's a good point, though, too, because everyone's worried about their jobs being taken, but they forget these types of comments where, you are going to need to specialize and learn new skills to really adopt this technology.
I mean, to that point, and we got to wrap real quick, but to that point, like people thinking, there was this thought piece I read by John Biggs this week, was talking about how middle managers are getting slaughtered by AI, and all the layoffs were happening in middle managers. Just from playing with Auto GPT this week, what it is it's playing the role of a middle manager, but it's at this point doing it poorly, because it's a middle manager that was programmed by some engineers that thought they read a manual and go, okay, we can like, you could really, if you're good middle manager, if you understand a variety of management techniques, you could really innovate in the AI space by applying those rubrics on top of managing LLM decision making, because it's the exact same thing you have to deal with in reality with humans. You've got a variety of bullshitters and quality educated people, and like all these people that fall somewhere in between, and you have to have a process that manages the spectrum of outputs. Sometimes the LLM makes some really bad decisions, and sometimes it makes some really brilliant ones. And the rubric of managing it is the rub, right? And if you're doing it in an automated fashion, that means a human's not going to be overseeing it. So you have to have a set of rules that oversees like that spectrum of possibility that produces an effective output. That's like the most boring job in the world, middle management. Those people that just got laid off, that's the biggest growth opportunity I see right now in AI.
Nice.
So there's the cost. That's worth the cost of admission right now, I think.
Good way to wrap that up.
Yeah.
Awesome. Wow.
Yeah. So this has been fun. We're going to talk about the brain or some more, I guess, next week.
Yeah.
What induces dopamine and serotonin and all that mess? No, we'll talk about some cool stuff, but you'll have to come back next week to find out what it is going to be. So see you then.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.